Okay, how's everybody doing? So this is a bit of an addendum regarding the backdrop that I somehow forgot to add in an earlier vlog, and some of the subscribers mentioned it, so I want to honor that. So what I'll do is I'll just insert a quick clip on some of the construction application there, and then I'll just summarize it, and then just talk about a few other points just to bring this particular phase to a close. And then talk a little bit about what I'm going to vlog next, okay? Okay, so the backdrop panels are going in now, and I'm going to start with this first corner. I'll just leave this for now. That's going to be about a 7-foot run, but I want this seam to be just before the apex of the curve. There you can see about where the 45 is there, right? You don't want a seam, you know, in the middle of your curve, right? Because otherwise you don't get a tight, tight seal on the seam. And you can see it's already 45'd here, right, with the hand plane like I showed in the earlier episode, vlog 6. And then, so we're going to run this curve, and this is 8 foot, this 1/8 MDF. You can see where it's going to match that panel there. Like this here will slide over. It'll slide over to here. Okay, so I can tag that seam there, which is already 45. And then, so how do I get that curve, or how do I establish that radius? Well, you can just eyeball it if you want, or if you want it to match the fascia curve, well, I just do it with this here, because this is the offcut, right, from the left corner fascia curve that came out of here. When I cut it from a plate for the backing of this fascia, remember the curvature there? I did on each side and the upper as well. So I have like 4 of these offcuts, right? So I'm going to use now this. I'll just shove it in here like this, like that. And there's my radius tagged in, just a screw where that clamp is, and then one on the cleat to the left of it. Okay, so just in closing then with the backdrop, when I say free floating, what I mean is the actual backdrop is only pinned to a few risers. Like there's no glue or screw or tape or mud. Like it's still 3 panels that move separately with expansion and contraction. Except that the seams now are, like the seams are 45, like they're not butt joints. Like if you have a butt joint, right, they look horrible when they move, which explains why people tape and mud. But if you 45 or scarf them, you don't need to. You can just skim them, or you can skim coat them, because there'll always be material in behind the seam on the other panel. Okay, and then in terms of pinning, so it's just pinned like with 5 brads on each side of the seam, like this. But this isn't where the seam is here, nor is it here. It's right here. You can't see this one, which is ironic because it's right by the window where all the humidity and heat and so on would be the most changing, right? You know, I think that's due to the humidity. It causes the board to swell, so it would tighten the seam, because that's what happens with a scarf, is the seam tightens as the wood expands, and it retracts as the wood dries, but it doesn't open up like a butt joint, okay? And then with this one here, you can sort of see the line, but I'll just touch that with 400 sandpaper and then give it another roll with paint, which is easy to do. As seasons change, if you're really picky about it, you can just re-roll it and it's no big deal, okay? So while I'm here, I just want to talk about the corners, because someone mentioned about, the depth reaching in. Like that's probably the only caveat with this style is maybe, reaching in, but there's going to be basically just a building back there, like on each corner anyway, right? Which I won't have to reach in very often, and it's easily solved with a footstool anyway, so, which, I'm going to be building a special custom one just for working on this layout when I do the track, which is no big deal, and which is also why I put the shorter valance up here. This is 6 feet right here, like the camera, So for those of you that are 6 feet or taller, this is how you see it. Okay. I'm 5'10", 5'10 and a half or so. So I'm viewing it actually from where I am, like in the same way. I can see a little bit underneath, but this valance, upper valance though, like eventually I'll probably add a deeper one when most of the scenery, backdrop scenery is finished. Now some might go, oh, why more? Well, you know that Glover Road was only 9 inches? That's right, about to here. It's hard to believe, isn't it? But if you go back into the community tab and scroll down, you'll see it was 9 inches. So right now this is, I think 16 or so. Okay, so that's the floating backdrop. So when it does move, like expand and contract, there's no pins on the corners. So if it does move or shrink, it's going to bow inward and you're not going to notice it. The reason why I have some pins along places where I thought I might not is just to help, just to hold it upright better. But it just sits on the frames anyway. And then there's some little more there than I needed, but that's a fairly long run there, so just to keep it more stable. But it basically just floats on the benchwork because the benchwork's going to move a little bit differently with humidity. And up here in the Pacific Northwest, it's just wreaks havoc on wood structures. You know, the cold and the heat and the humidity, even though it's fairly mild, but a lot of moisture anyway. So this is all done now. The actual structure, in terms of the footprint, as I mentioned earlier, is all basically done. So there's the 3 phases, right? Like I'm going to talk about track laying next. I've ordered the track code 70. I ordered a microengineering code 70. I have Atlas code 83, which I'm going to use for the main. And then all the rest of the sidings will be code 70 because I want that to be prominent, especially on the sidings, that look, you know. So, and then the details are obviously the last phase. So there's the 3 phases, right? There's the, you know, the conceiving of the plan, right? The conception of it, the ideas, you know, the inspiration, you know, and then we plan on paper and so on. And then there's the actual structure, the benchwork, the footprint, you know, which track work is kind of in there too, I guess, with risers and so on. And then all the details, which will be, you know, buildings, you know, maybe industries and how the layout will operate and so on. Like it's all, you know, they're all inclusive of each other in one way or another. They overlap, you know, so. Okay, so that's that for that. And now the next phase, as I say, the track's been ordered. I'm going to be ordering some bolted birch. 3/8 I'm going to use for the track roadbed. And just before I close, let me just mention right here about the corners, because somebody mentioned about the curvature. Now, if this is 2 feet wide and this is 2 feet wide and you come together, you assume that the corner's 2 feet deep, but it's actually 3 feet now. Like I added a curved backdrop, which some would think you lose a bit, but you don't really lose any. Because if you mirror the front, which is the same diameter from this plate here, it's actually, when I put the tape measure on this, it's 3 feet. So I gain a lot of broad sweeping space on the corners so I can establish wider radius curves, right? Because that's really what I want on this layout. I want a little bit of tangent here and there, but mostly curves. And most of the turnouts would be just on module B there, just before we enter the curve, for the approach to the warehouse and the barge slip and so on. Okay, so, and then there'll be the section where the runaround, there'll be a couple of runarounds built in, and then there'll be a 3-way turnout that will go into, what you see here on the model is actually going to be in this corner, you know, the approach to the shops, but maybe a little more reduced than that. And of course, this model only shows a 16-inch wide. I actually revised it to 2 feet as well, so there's quite a lot of space in here. And then I'm not really sure about C in terms of details and industry. I mean, I might be able to squeeze in actually quite easily the grain elevator here, and then redo part of Glover Road just on the corner here. So, but I haven't decided that yet. That's going to be in more detailed phase. But yeah, moving right along and going about it in a methodical way as the experienced builders suggest. And, you know, it makes a difference. So thanks for tuning in and getting excited now, because now we get into the track planning phase, right? Okay. So I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.